just about as groovy as a 10-cent movie. I'm your man, Calvin Gibbs. You're listening to Drama Talk Radio Podcast. As you know, Drama Talk is the show where the word drama, DRAMA, stands for developing real and moving art. So happy, pleased, and blessed that you decided to listen to this podcast today, because I have a young man in the studio with me today, and he is the prince of poetry. And I'm going to tell you why he's the prince of poetry. Because he has learned his craft. He has found his niche. He develops real and moving poetry that will touch the heart. And when I say touch the heart, I'm talking about love. Please welcome to the show, Eros, the prince of poetry. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here. Super happy to be here. Honored. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So let's get to know you a little bit better. When did you first start with poetry?
I originally started writing almost 20 years ago as a young adolescent. It was a coping mechanism, actually, believe it or not, for the absence of my father growing up. So I started writing as a way to cope and to offset some of the negative emotions I was feeling, and it just stuck.
Okay, and you're from the south side of Chicago?
Born and raised south side of Chicago, born in Inglewood, right off 60th and Paulina. I was actually born at home.
Okay.
Believe it. Yeah.
Okay. Now, for those that may not know, the south side of Chicago sometimes has some negative monikers attached to it, as far as it being dangerous, as far as nothing positive going on. But you are breaking all that down, killing those stereotypes. The Prince of Poetry is also a national award-winning poet. He's a recording artist who just dropped an album last month. He's the 2020 Ham Slam Poetry Champion, the CEO and founder of Hot Chocolate Poetry. He's a mentor for the youth, and he's been known to leave his audience full of love and self-reflection. So, first of all, sir, how did you come up with the name Eros?
So initially, my stage name was just the Prince of Poetry. Mm-hmm. And I used that moniker because I believe the people who came before us deserve the titles to be kings and queens of the art. I'm referring to individuals like Langston Hughes, Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni. But even we can go further back to that if you take like some of the Bible writers like Asaph or King David or Solomon. So I feel like because we're all students of the art and we come through the lineage of those that came before us, the rest of us would just be princesses coming through that lineage. And then the thought dawned on me. One, the word the Prince of Poetry is a mouthful. Walking into a room and introducing yourself with 4 different words, it could be a little bit much. But then two, as I started to write and my writing started to narrow down to more of a focus, I realized that there was a common theme in everything that I wrote, which was love. Right. So I focus on love from a relationship standpoint, from a self-love standpoint, loving your neighbor, our relationship with God. And so then I did some research, and Eros was the name that stuck. Now, when most people hear Eros, they think of the Greek god of love. That's the son of Ares, and I can't think of the mother's name. This name always escapes me for some reason. Aphrodite, yeah, the goddess of love. Mm-hmm. And so they had a son, and they named their son Eros. Then the Roman equivalent to that would be Cupid, right? So a lot of people think from that perspective. But the word love itself is broken down in 4 different sections. There's storge love, there's agape love, there's filial love, and then there's eros love. And eros love is the love that exists between 2 people. And that is the love that I capture the most in my poetry, which is why, in turn, named myself Eros, the Prince of Poetry.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I got to ask you a little personal questions. Are you married?
I am not.
Okay. Have you ever been married?
I have.
Okay. I have listened to some of your work, sir, and yeah. I'm sure when you perform, you capture the single lady's attention. because you speak words on a level. You break love down. You talk the truth about love and relationships. Um, have you ever had any negative feedback about your work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that it's only realistic. One, if anytime you put art on a public platform, you need to be prepared for all aspects of criticism, both positive and negative. I think one of the most consistent adverse comments I've been given is that sometimes the way I perform and refer to love seems unrealistic. That it doesn't feel like this is something that you can walk out your door and see. I'm a firm believer, though, that we manifest what we want to see. So life and death are in the tongue.
Right.
And so if I speak it, I can create it, I can see it, even if it's not present in front of me, right? Every idea, every physical, tangible thing started with a thought. So if we can shift our thoughts and our words, then that can lead to action and it can create the life that we want. And so that feedback doesn't stop me from pushing forward because I firmly believe that we need more love in this world. And the first step is to start speaking on it.
Absolutely. Those negative comments that you've gotten, that it doesn't seem like reality. I wonder if those comments are coming from people that have had bad relationships or maybe in a bad relationship. And do they realize that if they listen and ponder, think about the words that you're saying, and begin to speak them themselves, they can turn that negative into a positive. Just as you said, just by speaking it. So when you go to different poetry competitions, shall we say, around the area, around the country, and you have been all around the country in poetry shows and competitions, where does the topic of love place in the subject matter of those competitions?
I think that it varies, obviously based on what the audience wants to hear. I think that oftentimes love is not in many of these competitions, or it's not something that people discuss often. Talking about love requires a great level of vulnerability. And it also requires that we perform it in such a way where it's personal, but it's also relatable, right? And everybody's experience with love is different. And so usually I'm the only love poet who steps on most stages, which is fine. But I mean, obviously I'm not the only one, but in a lot of places I've been, that's kind of been my focus, and it's not normally everybody else's.
Yeah. And the reason I asked you that is because I've been to several myself, and you don't hear love very often. But when you think about the rap artists that have come up over the years, take somebody like LL Cool J. He started talking about, different things that he had gained, his wealth, and, some people talk about their cars and, this, that, and the other, what they got, their women or whatever. But he has focused on love in a lot of his work. And I feel that has led to his longevity in the game. So I hope that translates to you as well, because it's a message that needs to be heard. There's a lot of problems these days in relationships, and a word of wisdom is definitely needed. Yes, sir. So have you ever, besides the topic of love, what are some other things that you have ventured into as far as topics?
So love is obviously the umbrella, but you can break that down into several different facets, right? So one of the things I talk about a lot is self-love, right? When we hear love, naturally, the first thing we think about is romance. But self-love is equivalently important. So there are poems that I talk about where when we look in the mirror, we tend to look at our flaws only. We may be dressed the best we've ever dressed and smelling good. You know, we may have a nice, expensive outfit on, and we can't stop noticing the pimple in the middle of our forehead, right? Or we can't stop noticing how our stomach may stick out over our belt. You know, we feel so self-conscious about things, and a lot of that just comes from a place of self-hate. You know, we've been taught to see our flaws so frequently that we're not taught really how to love ourselves, you know, and so that's a topic that's very near and dear to me, is learning how to love you. Another one is a poem that I wrote, and I got some national attention for this, a poem I wrote called Cry King, where I talk about how to be in tune with how you feel, emotionally vulnerable, specifically for brothers who tend to shy away from crying. That piece also mirrors self-love and talks about the importance of being connected to your emotions and how it's healthy and necessary in order to move forward and to properly heal, to express what you actually feel. But all of those things are under the topics of love. The poems I've written for my children, the poems I've written for me, the poems I've written about my relationship with God, my relationship with my fellow man, it all falls under the umbrella of love.
Okay. As you travel this country, have you noticed any, from the male point of view, any differences in the subject of love? Now, I'm an East Coast guy, born and bred in Brooklyn. And when I moved here to the Midwest, I was like, whoa, these guys have a different idea of how, different idea than what I have about what love is and relationships and women in general. So do you find the same thing as you travel around the country?
You know, that's an excellent question. I find myself like coming from Chicago, you know, from the hood, it's a different energy, period. You know what I'm saying? So when you perform here in the city, I felt like subject matter wasn't as important in Chicago from a performance standpoint as much as how good you were with your pen, right? So if you're going to describe love in Chicago, you better bring the bars, because Chicago poets don't play. You know, they real, like, they want to hear it the right way. You can't just get up there and be like, you know, roses are red and sometimes they blue. You know, you need to you need to really bring the heat. And so when I would take these poems across the country, though, you know, sometimes you would immediately get this like rose-colored glasses that I've noticed that, you know, maybe women may, you know, see me in, but some of that could just be star energy, and then other times it could be something that they want to manifest. There seems to be more of a longing for it in other places than I've noticed here in Chicago. Chicago is a little bit like, you know, standoffish sometimes with it, like, you know, what are you saying over there? And then in other places, they're a little more inviting. You know, it's a little easier to swoon in other places than it is here at home. Okay. But the fact that I have been able to do it is still a blessing nonetheless. But it makes me push harder. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, the ground is not as cultivated in some places as it is in others. So, and as an artist, it's my job to find the best way to permeate. So that means stretching my pen to whatever means I have to touch the people that it's supposed to touch.
That's true. And I'm glad that you answered that way, because I want to ask you about a time, if you can tell a little story about a time where you were not appreciated on stage.
Man, that would, honest to God, that would be kind of hard for me to do. Okay. Because I think maybe in my younger years, I could recall times where maybe a crowd didn't care for me as much. But honestly, you know, Cav, I don't perform for the crowd anymore.
Right.
When I get up on a stage, I feel that I have a message that God wants me to share with the people. And that's all I really care about. And so I remember a while back, I talked to an artist who I love and respect. And she told me, Chris, if you change one, that's my government name. You can bleep that out. I'm just kidding. But she told me, Chris, if you can touch one heart in the crowd, you've done your job, even if that one heart is yours. And that's all that matters to me. So when I get up on the stage, I always say a quick prayer, which is, God, allow me to touch the hearts that I'm supposed to touch. And if I don't touch one heart, God, let me move mine a little bit more. And that is my consistent prayer every time I step on the stage. So honestly, I've never left the stage and felt like, oh man, you know, they didn't like me. You know what I mean? Because I'm not really there for that as much. Now, it does feel good to be liked. Ego is always impacted when people give you accolades and things of that nature. But really, that kind of tells us why we're doing it. Like, are you doing it for the claps? You know, are you doing it because you really feel like you've been sent with a message? And I feel the latter, you know, that I'm here for a reason and I'm sharing for a reason. So I just go with that.
Okay, good. Very good answer, because as a performer, it is all about delivering that message to the
Amen.
audience. You know, there's a connection that's made between audience and performer, or speaker and performer, and you always want to be the one that's being give it as much of you as you can, so that they can receive that message. So, in other words, no one has ever thrown anything at you, or you never had been booted off the stage, which is a good.
No, that's never happened.
Brother, you haven't been in front of New York crowds. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, let's just pray that they don't. Let's pray I'll bring it hard enough from New York too.
Because I've actually seen some poetry at the Apollo Theater.
Yeah.
Up in Harlem, and my wife went there with me one time, and she will tell you, it's a hard crowd, man. You have like 15 seconds to get their attention and hold it. Otherwise, it gets interesting. So,
I think one of the things that helps with that, and honestly, if anyone ever hears me perform or watches me perform, you'll see that I speak with a whole lot of passion. Passion is so important when it comes to this art form, because really poetry is not as much about the words as it is about the energy you're conveying when off the stage. People are really in tune with you feeling your words. And sometimes poets may step to a stage and they're unsure, right? They have a level of timidity about themselves because they want to be liked so badly.
Right.
But if you're in tune with your message and you're connected to it, there's nothing that can move that, right? You're stepping on the stage in full confidence that this is why you were sent. And in that case, you like Jeremiah, where he said, the God's word is like fire in my bones. You know what I'm saying? I got to let this out. And so that's the energy I try to keep all the time.
Fantastic. Now, you also work with the youth. And
I do.
And your message of self-love, I think, is something that the youth today really needs to hear, really need to get into their heart. When you go, where do you go to speak to the youth at?
Most consistently, Chicago Public Schools.
Okay.
And whenever we're in these schools, man, I'm gonna tell you, Calvin, it's one of the most amazing things and heart-wrenching things is to see how sometimes young Black boys refer to being called a king. I've literally had young kids tell me, I ain't no king, my name, DeMonte. Right. I'm like, I understand, young king, you know what I mean? But that's a compliment. But see, they don't even understand sometimes what it's like to have somebody speak an affirmation over them.
That's right.
And that's okay. I mean, in terms of why I'm there, because I understand that we're there to change the narrative. And that's something that people will hear me say a lot. Like, we have to change the narrative. Regardless of what these kids are used to, doesn't mean that that's what we have to keep them in. We all had to come out of tough spaces. I had to learn so many different things. When I left Inglewood for the first time and went to London, I was completely flabbergasted at just everything, like just the newness of America versus the history of London, like how old that country is. And Paris, the same thing. And so sometimes allowing people to step outside their environments is necessary, but everybody can't step outside their environments. So sometimes people have to step into their environments and change the way that they see it. And so I've learned the importance of doing that. Because I've been outside of that place, I can come back to these people carrying first fruits and I can say, hey, this is what the world is like outside of this place, outside of these four walls, outside of this neighborhood, outside of this, 8-block radius, right? And when I finish speaking with these kids, man, just watching the joy in their heart, their desires to share what they've written, their desires to share their talents is a blessing. Another thing that I do with an artist named Geronimo Speaks, one of my favorite spoken word artists in Chicago, we host a class here with the Juvenile Detention Center. And watching these young kids who have gotten into trouble with the law for all types of things, as you can possibly imagine, we literally host a talent show with them every Monday and Tuesday. And just watching these kids get excited about sharing what they've been writing and teaching them the business of artistry man, it's one of the most gratifying feelings in the world.
I bet.
So yeah, man, that's that's the joy of it.
Cool. And the kids really need that. And you're doing a great work with them too. Got to give you kudos for that, man.
Thank you.
A lot of brothers are focused on themselves. And when you're working with the youth, the next generation, trying to get them on the right track, we all win. So thank you for that. Going back to kings, queens, and princes and princesses, actually, I noticed that you referred to me as king. I saw the email. You said, thank you, king, and peace. And that brought me back to my youth, because that's the way that the guys I grew up with, we referred to each other as kings and queens. We were princes at that time. A good friend of mine died last Friday, and on his obituary, I wrote about him being a king and the love he had for his queen after 40 years of bliss, marriage. And that is something that is missing from our heritage, or was taken away from us. And a lot of us don't have the realization of self, that we were kings and queens. We came from kings and queens. We should act accordingly. So great work what you're doing with the youth. I really, really appreciate that. And I want to talk a little bit about your album, the Love Her album. I had a chance to listen to it. It's available on all streaming platforms. And I'm going to tell you the cuts that I like the most. Movie Time Love. I was grooving on that one. Time for You and Explain Therapy. Now, Explain Therapy. Tell me a little bit about that, because that's a little different.
So there's 5 therapy sessions actually throughout the entire album.
Right.
Therapy 1 through therapy 5. And basically the Love Her album is set as a story. It's a visual movie. And what you're going to hear in the beginning of this album is a man and a woman in couples therapy. And they can't seem to see eye to eye. And here are 2 amazing individuals, 2 people who really want to get it right, who really want to have a good, positive relationship, and they're good human beings, but they're definitely on 2 different pages. The queen is explaining to the brother that, she feels like she's not being heard, that she's going through all this emotional trauma on the inside and some personal struggles. And all he can hear is his character being attacked. He doesn't see how she's drowning. He doesn't see how, she's crying for help. He's so focused on the position that he's in himself, which is he's a healed man. He's a good man. He's trying his best to be good for her, but he's not really seeing her and what she's going through. So as the Love Her album plays through, you start to hear him discuss his mindset on love. And slowly you hear the therapist start to shift the way he sees his relationship. And by the time it's over, he has a completely different outlook. The Love Her album covers 5 different facets of love. We talk about loving her is accountability. Loving her is vulnerability. Loving her is responsibility. Loving her is intimacy. And loving her is reflection. And so taking the time to do all those things in our relationships, we believe obviously will create more positive outcomes for individuals who try to walk this life together.
All right. Fantastic. It's a fantastic work. And as I said, I love the time for You.
Yeah, that's definitely a crowd favorite.
Yeah, that was deep. That was deep. I also love the music that's used as well. I thought I couldn't find one. I listened to all 13 tracks, I believe, and I couldn't find music that didn't fit.
Yeah.
And that's rare that I would be able to say that, because I always find music that was like, I don't really like that. That could be something different. But on each and every cut, I love the music that's playing in the background. And then, of course, your words enhances, I should say, the music enhances your words and brings the message out. So very good work with that. Did you choose the music yourself?
I did actually, and I'm glad you brought that up. So that actually means a lot to me that you said that. I've listened to several poetry albums, and that is a challenge that I think sometimes as artists we have with trying to find the proper music for this form of art. It's not rap, it's not R&B, so it's not like you're kind of flowing with just the melody. But on the same token, it has to be pleasing to the ears, right? And so when you hear a beat and you hear words, when they don't mesh up properly, it kind of throws off the entire vibe that you're trying to create. So I spent a lot of time and, frankly speaking, a whole lot of money trying to find the right beats for every single track on here. All these poems were written before I found the music for them.
Okay.
And then when I found the music for them, I practiced saying the piece over and over to that sound. If it didn't work, if there were any gaps, I had to just get rid of it and then find another sound. But then also I thought to myself, what's the vibe that we're trying to create? If a beat is too fast, does it throw off the message of the track? Right? If it's too slow, does it lag? Does it create some drag time? Does it become boring? So all those things were thoughts that we had when it came into picking them. Geronimo Speaks also was the creative director of this album, and he was very influential in also helping me decide which beats we would use as well. So we were very happy with what our selection was.
Okay, great. And as I said, this is available now. Just dropped last month. It's available on all streaming platforms right now. I definitely recommend that the listeners go to, if you can't go anywhere else, go to Apple iTunes. That's where I found it, and you can download it from there. So what's next for you? What projects do you have coming up?
So there's a couple things that we're working on. One, I'll be at Vegas at the end of the month. We're doing a show called Vocal, Voices of Chicago in Las Vegas. And then we'll be coming back here doing the same show here, but the Chicago version. I'm also working on a book currently called The Love Plug. This is a book that discusses my upbringing as an African-American male and my relationship with love and how my upbringing shaped my views of love. And so this is going to be a really exciting book that I can't wait to drop. That'll be coming out towards the end of spring of 2021. And then I'm going to be getting started on the Love Her album, the stage play. So we're super excited about that, putting that together, writing out that script, and really bringing the Love Her album to life.
Okay. Well, I definitely will be looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
And as somebody in theater, I know we can definitely use some of your input to make sure it's a quality stage play.
Oh, man, I would be honored to be a consultant, whatever capacity you might need me in. I've done it all, so I'm willing to share that expertise with you. Not a problem. Just contact me. And if our listeners would like any to contact you, where can they reach you at?
They can find me across all social media platforms at The Prince of Poetry. On Instagram, it's _Prince of Poetry. But you can just look me up. That's where you'll find me everywhere. And obviously, as you stated, my streaming platforms for my music are available everywhere under Eros, the Prince of Poetry, EROS.
Okay.
The Prince of Poetry.
Okay. And also, I'm just going to throw your government name out there because people may see that and say, "Oh, that's not the right person," but it's Christian Bowie.
Actually, it's pronounced Christian Bowie. There's an accent mark over the A. Right. So it's spelled the same as Christian, but there's just a slight accent mark. But Christian Bowie across all social media too. You can find me. That's my personal page, but I post a lot of poetry there also.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I got to tell you, Prince of Poetry, I'm just going to call you Drama because you are developing real and moving art. Brother, thank you so much for being on Drama Talk Radio. I really appreciate this time with you, and blessings and much success to whatever you have going on in the future. Feel free to come back anytime. Anything I can do to help you, be of service, I'm here for you, bro.
Beyond grateful. Thank you so much for this amazing platform. Thank you for being the king and stand-up brother that you are. Happy to be connected. Let's keep linking and building in the future.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, that's about all, y'all, for this segment of Drama Talk Radio. My guest today has been Eros, the Prince of Poetry. And I'm your host, Calvin Gibbs. And it's always imparting that we take 2 steps to the rear and get on out of here until the next episode of Drama Talk Radio. exit, stage left.